And we're back for the next episode of
The Horror Guys. Yay! Episode 291 of The Horror Guys.
Wow.
Where we're going to talk about some horror movies.
How many?
Six horror movies.
And
a short.
that's almost like 7.
That's exceedingly a lot. Several of them are new things, so we're not going to spoil the heck out of them.
Right.
Arcadian from 2024. A Nick Cage.
I like video games.
Yeah. And a New Life from 2023, which was really released this year.
Yeah.
And Furiosa, continuing our Mad Max and making it complete. We've seen them all now and talked about them all. They border on horror. They got some horror elements to them.
They border on some cases, too.
Well, Furiosa was a little bit talky, but we'll talk about that some more.
Horror talk.
Yeah. And there was a 2024 indie-ish film, Cold Blows the Wind. That we saw.
It's cold.
Yeah, and we were pretty pleased by that. And an old Psycho Circus from 1966.
Dun, 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 dun.
It was a lot less circusy than I expected. A lot less psycho than I expected. Yeah. And the third Child's Play movie, the third Chucky movie.
That's where the psycho comes in.
Well, his gets complicated because he's got the Child's Play, and then he's got the Chucky series, and then he's got the Child's Play reboots, and reboot, just one. And
I'd say if you looked at the actors who played Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and Pinhead and all, I think Brad Dourif has probably got it topped. He's done more Chucky than anybody else.
And all he has to do is show up to the studio.
Yeah, being
for
a
the
voice
most,
actor, it makes it easy.
For a lot of it, yeah.
All right, well, anyway, the week is, as always, brought to you by HorrorGuys.com and HorrorGuys.com/books, where you can pick up the Horror Guys Guide to the films of...
Who?
Vincent Price.
Ooh.
Roger Corman. Boris Karloff. Christopher Lee. Not Christopher Lee. Don't have Christopher Lee yet. Someday. Peter Cushing. That's
the other guy. Yeah.
Or you go over to Hour Long Books and get biographies of all those guys. And Christopher Lee and Peter Lorre and a few other new Lon Chaney Jr. and Sr. and all those guys.
We just recommend going to the website and browsing around.
Yeah.
There's lots available.
There's going to be some changes next week, too.
There will.
Yeah,
and even more things available.
If you're on the podcast, you'll hear all about it. You don't need to do anything, but they're going to see some changes next week.
Good changes.
We will see about that.
Yeah, good for everybody.
Probably good. Mm-hmm. All right, well, anyway, we're going to start off alphabetically with Arcadian. 2024, directed by Benjamin Brewer, written by Mike Nyland, stars who?
Nicolas Cage.
And Jaden Martell and Maxwell Jenkins. Hour and 32 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. All right. That sounds cool. All right. Well, what happens spoiler-free?
Well, this was very slow-moving and low on action for the first hour or so, focusing more on survivors and how they are carrying on. We're gradually filled in on how the world is now, and things pick up a lot in the last half hour with a lot more action. Not everything is explained, but it tells a good story that we liked. It explains enough. But of all the, like you said, of all the Nick Cage movies, this is one of them.
Yeah,
it was just kind of adequate.
It's all right. It's a well-made horror film, but there's nothing here that really jumps out. And nothing here that you haven't seen before.
Nothing too terribly new. The creatures are kind of cool.
Remember that movie, It Comes at Night?
Mm-hmm.
If you added monsters to that...
Yeah, similar.
The way the trailers promised there was going to be monsters.
Uh-huh.
This is that, only
this one
with
really
monsters.
has monsters.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not fair. I mean, the world ended. They talk about the world ending, and this is years later, and they're still fighting for survival. Like, come on. They just, carry on with your lives now. No, you still got to fight monsters and try to survive. And yada,
it's
yada.
also like The Quiet Place, only without the quiet bit.
Yeah, it's noisy. Yeah. It's the noisy place.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to spoil it to death, but to give you a taste, a man in a backpack runs through deserted streets. We hear sirens, gunshots, and explosions as the credits roll. Paul continues running past piles of bodies and past hordes of screaming people that we don't actually see. It's low budget.
Yeah.
He gets out of town as civilization collapses around him.
It's effectively done.
Which we don't see.
But
it's
we
low
get
budget.
We get the message. Yeah.
At some point, he picks up 2 babies. Actually, you only see one baby at this point. It's not revealed until later that they're twins.
Okay.
Not really a spoiler. 15 years later, Paul and his two sons, Joseph and Thomas, live out in the country away from the city. When it starts getting dark outside, they all close up the shutters over the windows and heavily lock the doors. Thomas, we're told, has been spending a lot of time at the Rose Farm. There's something at the Rose Farm that he likes. Wink, wink, nudge,
Wink,
nudge.
wink. What could that be?
As the boys play chess, the dog starts scratching at the floor, which gets all of them on alert. Suddenly, there's crazy banging at the door, and they have to help hold the door shut. Whatever it is, it soon goes away. In the morning, the outside of the door is covered in scratches.
So there's something out there at night.
Paul talks about the earth being past the worst part, and the air and the water are getting cleaner. Okay.
Okay. But
He still has hope for humanity, but Joseph isn't so sure. Joseph has gotten an old cart running, like not a go-kart. Yeah, a go-kart.
oh, golf cart.
Golf cart,
Kind
yeah.
of golf cart kind of style.
And they use it to drive to the town for some salvage. Thomas, on the other hand, is obsessed with hanging out at the Rose Farm. Mr. and Mrs. Rose are nice, but he's way more interested in their daughter, Charlotte.
Aha.
Charlotte and Thomas play a game of Recap the Apocalypse badly in 10 seconds. Tell us what happened in the apocalypse, but only 10 seconds.
And bad,
Go!
And do it badly. So neither of their stories
They're both
were,
wrong, yeah.
Yeah.
Charlotte says it's something to do with bugs and a plague and the machines taking revenge. Thomas says everyone turned into wolves and ran for the forest. Or maybe they're just making the whole story up.
Uh-huh.
And as we see later, neither of those really works out quite right. All right, well, there's an accident, and Thomas doesn't make it home one night.
And we should stop there.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah.
Paul goes looking for him, while Joseph stays to lock up and defend the house. And, this leads to events.
Yeah. Much happens after that.
All right, we're down to the commentary bit. It's very slow moving, and at about the 1 hour mark, I was starting to suspect that it really wasn't going anywhere.
But it did.
Nick Cage is good here. He always is. But he's out of the picture for a large part of the film, leaving the drama in the hands of the two boys.
Yeah, Nick Cage's role could have been anybody.
It really could have.
Any dad age guy.
He didn't do it as cageisms or anything.
Yeah.
He was just a guy, yeah.
Yeah, and he wasn't the main character even.
Nope.
The boys are.
The action does pick up in the final half hour. Well, we don't get a really good close-up look at the monsters at all, but what we do see is really kind of something else, like werewolf alligators. Imagine a werewolf with an alligator head.
And
The trivia.
The trivia. I'm going to mention that. Yeah, because the trivia says they were based off what Goofy looks like, the Disney cartoon character, and we just didn't see that.
No.
Gosh,
I'm a monster.
Werewolf alligators that move very fast. Yeah.
Yeah, we never really do get an explanation of what happened to the world or what those creatures really are. But, they're clearly not natural.
Yeah.
They're not people.
And they're still a problem for the survivors.
Yeah.
Even after 15 years. Yeah.
All right, well, that's as far as we're going to go with that. It's a finely made show. It's a good movie. It's decent enough.
Well, it's a good
It's
story.
just not exactly what you call innovative, or I was not enthralled.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't hate it.
Yeah.
It's just not impressive in any way.
Yeah.
Huh.
Vanilla pudding.
That sounds like a very poor review of a good movie.
Yeah.
Not a great movie.
It was okay. Yeah.
All right, well, then one that we were a little misled by the trailer
Uh-huh.
is 2023, just released here, New Life. Written and directed by John Rossman, stars Sonya Walger. And I recognize her from For All Mankind.
Uh-huh. Which was really good, and she was really good in
She
that.
got written out of that for this, probably.
She was really good in this.
Roni Amendola is Tony Amendola. He was in Stargate. Master Braytag. Remember him?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. And Haley Aaron, which I spelled right here.
Okay.
It's an hour and 25 minutes long. Trailer in the show notes. But I can tell you, the trailer led me to believe it was going to be some kind of Frankenstein story.
Mm-hmm.
They've made new life that escaped, and she has to go out hunting for it.
Yeah.
That's not it.
That's not what happens. Yeah.
This was heavy on human drama and psychological thrills with some horror on the side. It's much more dramatic than horrific, but I guess it could be taken that way.
Oh, yeah, it gets there.
The direction, cast, and script are all very good. It wasn't what we expected, but we did still like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it was.
All right. Well, what happens?
Well, we open on a bloody woman walking
where
through a
did we see
neighborhood
this? This is
alley.
on Prime, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, she goes into a house and washes off the blood. She knew where to look for the hidden key, so she knows this house or knows how to get in there.
Oh, it's under the floor mat. That doesn't prove anything.
Well, maybe, yeah. Well, she goes through some drawers and changes clothes, and she even finds a wedding ring. So is this even her house? Well, men with guns come in the front door as she climbs out the window. She's Jessica, and she's clearly on the run. Well, we cut to Elsa Gray, a woman who doesn't look too healthy. She's kind of shaky and unsteady, having some problems with movement. Well, she takes her medications and gets a visit from Raymond. He's a little pushy, but she goes along with it, making him coffee. Apparently he's a boss, and she's a gun for hire, basically.
A freelance gun for hire, yes.
Yeah.
He calls her a fixer a couple of times.
Yeah, He says there's a situation that has gotten out of control, and he needs her help. The subject is on the way to the border, and we can't let her cross. Well, we cut back to Jessica, who has a map and is hiding out in the woods. She comes to a farmhouse, sleeps in the barn, and we flash back to her locked in a cell in a very dirty old building. Well, Vince, one of Raymond's security hacker people, spots Jessica on a camera and reports her location to Elsa, who is annoyed that her own hands are shaking. Well, the farmer invites Jessica inside for breakfast. Frank and Janie have questions, and they seem nice, even though it's obvious she's lying about her story to them. Frank decides to drive her where she wants to go and gives her a bag of clothes and some supplies, and they go until the road ends. He reluctantly drops her off near more woods, and we notice that he has a cough that he didn't have before.
Oh, I had a theory at this point.
So did I. I kept having theories all through it, and
Yeah.
I was proven wrong, yeah. Well, meanwhile, we go back to Elsa. She's fallen down. Definitely something wrong with her physically, and we go into more of that, but you have to see the movie. We're not going to spoil it.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, I think so.
So we got the hunter who has some sort of physical disability, not able to walk or move correctly, and we have the prey who is something.
Something, yeah. We don't know. Mm.
Well, again, the trailers for this one are misleading. It's not what we expected going in, but we did like it. It's still good. The name of the film is New Life, and everyone's continually talking about starting over, second chances, and reinventing their lives. So there's kind of a theme here that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it was.
The acting is excellent all around, and the situation is more or less believable and realistic. It's got a good story, but it's almost an hour into the film before we really knew what was going on and why. There are horror elements that show up, but they're kind of minimal, with a couple of never mind. There's some things that I'm not going to spoil.
Things happen.
But it's definitely more psychological thriller than horrific.
Yeah.
But it's good either
is.
way. And if you are a horror fan, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of this one.
And actually, I'm going to name this one as my favorite of the week. Out of all
Let's
these.
see. I was really, really looking forward to Furiosa, but it is by no means my favorite of the week.
It was disappointing compared to the previous one.
I'm going to go with New Life also. Yeah, it's my favorite of the week also.
Yeah. And you mentioned Furiosa.
Our disappointment of the year, possibly.
Well, it was mighty disappointing.
Mad Max Fury Road is maybe one of the best, maybe the best action movie ever made, in my opinion.
It's right up there.
It is nonstop stuff going on, and it never slows down, and it never gets boring, and it looks good all the way through.
And then there's Furiosa.
This turkey has 10 minutes of real action and 2.5 hours of CGI talking.
There is so much of the action scenes that you can tell is just CGI.
Now, we watch this on our TV,
Yeah.
so TVs and big screens don't always look the same, but Fury Road looked just fine on our TV. This looked like a video game.
And there was way too many yucky pauses and negotiations and going from place to place, and
There's prequels, and then there's things that explain the characters, but there's way more
and that
than we
was
needed
kind
to
of
know
interesting
here.
seeing where Furiosa's origin and the origin of these places out in the desert. But
I would have liked to have seen more of that and less of her.
and trim it down, tightened it up.
Directed by George Miller, written by George Miller and Nick Lathoris, stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Tom Burke. If Chris Hemsworth had not been in this, it would be the biggest stinker of all time. He is the one bright star here.
He really did brighten it. Yeah.
Anya Taylor-Joy's been in a million things, and she's usually good, but here I think she was kind of miscast.
Yeah.
She spends half the time dressed up like a dirty little boy and the other half like a dirty older woman. So, yeah, all right, nothing much to that.
Okay.
2 hours and 28 minutes. With a runtime of an hour and a half of good movie, maybe.
It was long.
It's long.
Yeah, I would have liked to seen it condensed by a good half hour.
Yeah, you'd think you Fury Road, more of it, make it longer, give us more, give us more.
Uh-huh.
And be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
All right, spoiler free.
As we mentioned, a little disappointing after the steady action of the previous one. There is plenty of action, but also lots of talking and downtime, and the CGI seemed more obvious this time around.
I think this was a lot more rushed than the previous. He had years to make the other one, and most of those stunts and things were kind of practical in the first one.
A lot of it.
Or the CGI was subtle enough. CGI was subtle enough you couldn't tell.
There's one scene in particular that took him a long time to film, and it was very stunt heavy, and so it's not entirely CGI.
Not entirely.
But too much recognizable as CGI. Well, the cast is good, and it does tell us how Furiosa becomes who she is.
Did anybody really care?
Well, I cared.
It was a Mad Max movie with some cool-looking villains.
Okay.
She's just sort of a side character.
Yeah, well, she's the main character.
Well, we hear voiceovers about the collapse of society as the credits roll. I think there's some audio clips from previous films in there, too.
Might have been.
We zoom into Central Australia in a green place. 2 children pick apples to eat. Furiosa and her friend see a motorcycle gang sneak in, and they check them out invisibly. She's spotted because she's not really invisible, but she signals her people for help. The gang grabs the little girl and rides away, but 2 women on horseback pursue. None must live to tell of this place. It doesn't take long before the gang is down to 2 motorcycles and 1 determined pursuer. The final gangman takes Furiosa to Dementus's camp, and he's got a whole colorful crew of weirdos, and they want to know where she's from. He wants to know where she's from, but she won't speak. Meanwhile, the pursuer, who is Furiosa's mother, dresses up like one of Dementus's men and sneaks into camp. Under cover of a sandstorm, Furiosa and her mother escape, but Dementus has a way to track them. Furiosa rides on, but her mother remains behind to fight. When Dementus tortures the mother, Furiosa returns, and Dementus puts her in a cage. The History Man, that's his name, by the way,
Yeah, it is.
advises her to make herself invaluable, and Dementus will have to look after her and protect her.
Yeah, he's kind of a living Wikipedia.
The old
He's
man,
basically-
yeah.
Yeah, the old man. He knows a lot of stuff, and he's been around a long time. And, yeah.
But we know from the
if you
other
need to
Mad
know
Max...
something, you ask the history guy.
We know from the other Mad Max films, though, that Mad Max was a cop in the desert
Uh-huh.
in his 20s.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's maybe in his 30s or possibly
Well,
40s.
He's not in these.
Well, he was in the previous one.
Well, sort of. Yeah.
And this can come before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is maybe 10 years after the apocalypse.
Boy, things
Things
got
went
weird
bad fast.
Things-
These people got
things
weird
got
real
weird
quick.
Really quick. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, the one day, Dementus in his chariot encounters a lone war boy.
Yes, chariot. You heard that correctly.
Yeah, that's probably the best vehicle in the movie.
Yeah.
The war boy says he too comes from a place of abundance, and we recognize the war boys from the other movie. Dementus brings his whole crew to the place indicated, which just happens to be Immortan Joe's citadel that we've seen before.
Uh-huh.
Well, they all ride and demand their leader's surrender. He makes a speech about the people being able to choose their leader, and he sees Immortan Joe and the people leader, and he's not impressed. They aren't impressed with him either, and they demonstrate that Joe's soldiers are willing to die for their leader.
We should leave it there.
Yeah, there's a big fight, and this is only like 30 minutes in to this hour-and-a-half movie.
Lots does happen, but too much talking too.
I think the whole bit with her as a child being kidnapped, we heard
little
this.
too
We know
much.
this from the other movie. We know that this happened. We didn't need to spend a half an hour on it.
A little too much on that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Commentary here. The standout character is Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, who is so over the top and ridiculous that it is just perfect. If you thought he was funny in Thor Ragnarok, whoa.
He's awesome.
He's
awesome
way in this one.
Uh-huh.
There are many scenes that just seem posed, very artsy-fartsy like. I mean, the people like stand there with this colorful background as the fires go off around them, and yeah, it's like a painting because it's all
Or
CGI
comic book.
generated. Or comic book, yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really interesting characters here, better than any comic book movie. Unlike the previous film, Fury Road, there's a lot of very obvious CGI in this one. This one was long, and it felt long as well, especially since we already know who lives and who dies at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this all takes place in the same place with some of the same characters.
You know, Martin Joe's going to make it, and his one big son, and, you know, the various characters you can pick out. Like, oh, yeah, People Eater's going to make it.
Well, see, Dementus wasn't in Fury Road. Maybe that's a hint as to where it's going to go.
Yeah, what's going to happen to Dementus? Yeah.
Well, it gave us a lot of backstory that we didn't need and stretched on far too long. Now, I think the most interesting part of Fury Road was the villains. Mm-hmm. Immortan Joe and the People Eater and the Bullet Farmer and those guys. I would like to see more of those, and we get more of that here. But not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah.
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 It was exciting in the good parts, but there was way too much talking in this one. Mm-hmm. There's a whole romance in the last 45 minutes. And you already know how it's going to turn out because it's a prequel.
Yeah.
And we just never care about this guy. because why would you?
We know how it's going to turn out for him.
The one thing that saved Fury Road was that it was relentless and never slowed down for an instant. And this one did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It slowed down.
I mean, if you're a fan of the series, you're going to have to watch it if you haven't seen it already.
For completion, yeah.
But, yeah, I'm very disappointed.
Yeah.
Very disappointed. Then there's a short film called Bite that we watched this week.
Which was interesting.
Directed and written by Jack Puri, stars Nicola Burley, runtime 4 minutes and 37 seconds, and you can watch it on YouTube. There's a link in the show notes.
So it's a quick and enjoyable watch, and you should watch it.
A dancer walks home from an audition and gets a phone call from the casting director. We wanted someone with more bite. Maybe next time. What does that even mean? She doesn't know. But she goes to her studio and practices. She's not happy with her life. And then the mirror version of herself starts berating her too. How will she ever compete with a girl in the mirror? Well, okay, you can tell by the thumbnail that it's a vampire story. And vampires in movies are always graceful and skilled at everything they do. Probably just a matter of having time to practice, right?
Maybe she's not a vampire, though.
Maybe she's not. It's not completely clear here.
She certainly has a reflection, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the vagueness about what Val is distracts a little bit. What exactly happened here? It looks good and is well filmed, but the story itself is too brief to tell us what's going on. It's more like a scene of a movie.
Almost, yeah.
We don't know why this is happening. We don't know what happens.
Could have used more.
Yeah, this one's... We were talking about Furiosa being too long. This one's just a little too short.
Yeah, a little
We'd have liked more details.
Mm-hmm.
All right, which takes us to our recent film today, Cold Blows the Wind, written and directed by Eric Williford, stars Jamie Bernadette, Victoria Vertuga, and Tori B. Lawrence. Hour and 25 minutes, trailer in the show notes. Spoiler-free.
Spoiler-free? Well, this was a very well-made, low-budget film with a good story, skillful actors, and good direction. It's got good stuff in this. Things start bad, and they keep getting worse as weirdness piles on.
Yeah, it does it.
Yeah, and it never lets up, packing a lot into a short film so it moves well. We liked it a lot.
This is a low budget, not quite indie, but it gives that kind of vibe.
Yeah, you can clearly see that.
But it's just got a couple of actors in it, and it doesn't drag the way a lot of indie films do.
They make the most of what
they do.
got.
Yeah, it's very well done.
Yeah.
Well, a couple opens the trunk of their car, and the guy inside wants help. Well, that escalated very quickly. They've already kidnapped somebody. Dean thought the guy inside was dead, but Tasha says they can't leave him in there. He can't walk, so they carry him inside. While Tasha goes to get the guy a glass of water, Dean chooses a knife from the drawer. They clearly have different outlooks on where this is going.
Yeah, they do.
Tasha wants to take the injured jogger to the hospital, but Dean wants to finish him off. If we take him to the hospital, they're going to ask what happened. They argue back and forth for a while, and Dean soon gets his way, and the jogger is very, very dead.
So we put together that they hit the guy and wounded him.
Might be more to it than that, but
thought they killed him, yeah.
And they argue about cleaning up. How do you clean up blood stains in the foyer? Well,
lots of paper towels.
They put the guy in a wheelbarrow and take him out to the woods behind their house, still arguing about whether it was murder or putting him out of his misery. As they dig the hole, someone watches from the trees. Well, Dean says his parents could show up at the house at any moment, so he wants to go back home. He wants to get back to normal, and she argues that this is just all too easy for him, like he kills every Tuesday or something. Suddenly, there's a banging at the door. Someone's calling for help. A woman comes in, saying a man has been chasing her. She's Briar, and Tasha thinks they can rebalance their karma by helping the woman. But she knows about them burying the body in the woods, and she says so right away.
Yeah, you think, that it's just this woman come to help, and, and she almost kind of casually throws it in, and then there's that body buried in the woods.
What?
What? Oh, crap. She
Yeah.
knows about it. And then it gets more complicated.
Oh, yeah, it does. It's just getting started there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the three main leads all do very well here, and the situation gets weirder and weirder as it progresses. You think killing the jogger was bad? That's just the start.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of a psychological thriller than anything else, as the two normal people basically go insane through the events that just get worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's very good.
Yeah, we liked it. Would recommend.
Yeah. Psycho Circus.
1966, also known as Circus of Fear. I like that title better.
There's not
Circus
really any
of Fear.
psychos in this.
Yeah. And
There's
it's
not any like hypnosis or any of that mental stuff. There's nothing mental about this. So Circus of Fear is probably better.
Yeah, I think so. But they do these things for reasons.
Directed by Werner Jacobs and John Llewellyn Moxey. I'm John Moxey. I want to be
like
John Moxey.
John Moxey.
Maybe not Llewellyn Moxey. That just doesn't cut it. Written by Harry Allen Towers and Edgar Wallace. Stars Christopher Lee, Leo Genn, Anthony Newlands, Heinz Drock, and Klaus Kinski in a very early role for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays the same character he always plays.
Pretty much. I think he just shows up.
Yeah. Just be you.
Here I am. Okay.
Hour and 31 minutes, and there is that a trailer? I think it may just be the trailer. It might be the whole movie on YouTube.
Okay.
I don't remember where we saw this now.
No, that's an official trailer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Despite the title, and
I think it was Tubi, wasn't it? I'm not positive.
it's out there on streaming if you want to search. Go to justwatch.com,
and plug
type it in, Psycho Circus or Circus of Fear, it'll come up.
The poster is awesome.
Poster.
Yeah, it's got multi-panels of...
Oh, yeah, none of that happened in the movie,
intense
though.
things. Well, sorta.
Rabid
Yeah,
elephants, leopard attacks, women with knives, and
they're
cultists around them.
Really pushing it. With
Two
the
guys in a
poster.
fire and someone falling from the sky. And not one damn thing in that poster happens in the movie.
Well, sorta. Yeah.
Despite the title and alternate title that imply otherwise, it's more of a crime drama and mystery than horror. It's got its things. It's got Christopher Lee.
It's a crime caper. I liked the crime caper part. It starts out
Well,
with
that seemed weird, like something off the Avengers or something.
Yeah, it was a little bit contrived, almost Mission Impossible Avengers level of robbery that they do. I liked it.
It starts off as a very clever crime caper and shifts to a whodunit with lots of suspects. Does have Christopher Lee in a nice big role, even if he's wearing a hood for most of the movie. He's not fooling anybody. You know who's under that hood.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought it was very good and worth checking out.
Yeah, I had never seen this before.
I don't
might
think I
have heard
did
of
either.
It, but yeah.
If I did, I sure don't remember it. What happens?
Well, a man checks his watch and then peeps in at the dockmaster's office. Elsewhere, a group of men look at their watches and they set up signs saying the bridge ahead is closed. An armored car stops and they neutralize the police escort. They use the London Bridge's drawbridge to trap the armored car, and then they rob it and drop all the money down to a man in a boat below.
They are very well prepared.
Yeah, it was really well organized. All the men drop down into the boat for their own escape. The men on the boat then get away as credits roll. Well, Inspector Elliot arrives at the scene, and one guard has been killed. Everything didn't go completely according to plan. The robbers unload their loot in an old warehouse, and then they all gang up on Manson, the man who shot that guard. No one was supposed to get hurt. Well, the boss calls the man in charge and tells him to give Mason an extra share. Well, first, Mason needs to go see the boss out in the country. Manfred, the man from the dockmaster's place, is there, and he's got crazy eyes.
Klaus Kinski eyes.
Yes, he
that should be a
does.
song.
Klaus
You've got
Kinski
Klaus
eyes.
Kinski eyes.
Yeah. Well, someone anonymously calls Inspector Elliot with a tip about a car's license plate, and the police soon find a truck with that plate and run it off the road, killing the robbers inside.
All the robbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, meanwhile, Mason arrives in the country.
Which was not clear. I thought some of the robbers got away or something. It wasn't.
no.
Later on, they explained that all of them were killed in the crash, but it didn't look that way.
No, it didn't, but yeah, they were. Mason arrives out in the country, and he wants to go to a place called the Old Farm.
That's narrowing it down.
Yeah, Well, he goes inside and finds a lion in a cage, and someone off-screen throws a knife and kills Mason.
Good thing we didn't get attached to any of these criminals.
Yeah, they're all dead. Well, we cut to the circus. Mr. Barberini owns the circus, and he greets Gregor the lion tamer. Barberini says he doesn't want another accident, and we see that Gregor is wearing a hood to cover his face because he's so horribly scarred from big cat scratches under there. Apparently one of the shows went badly. Yeah. Barberina says it was one of the worst accidents he's ever seen. Well, we watch a few circus acts as Mario and Gina argue about where she's been. Mr. Big, the dwarf, threatens Gregor. Manfred comes to the circus looking for work. It's the weirdest job interview ever.
A lot of people here.
Yeah, there are. A lot of characters to keep straight. Well, we see that Gregor has a suitcase full of cash under the lion's cage. Mr. Big wants his money. He's blackmailing Gregor for something. Inspector Elliot talks to Sir John about the heist, and they still really don't have any new leads on the case. And Sir John is the boss. He gets a call that some of the stolen bills have been used, and so he goes to check that out. Mr. Barberini has deposited some of the bills in the bank.
As far as we know, none of these circus people had anything to do with the crime.
No. But there is that boss. Somebody is the boss. Well, back at the circus, Gina is sleeping with someone whose face we don't see. And we see that Mario is missing one of his knives, the one used to kill Mason. Elliot arrives at the circus just in time to see Mario fighting with Carla over Gina. There's three-way dramas here and romances. And Elliot wants to interview the various circus employees. He takes photos of most of them and sends them back to Scotland Yard. Mario and Gina arrive about her secret boyfriend as Mr. Big and Manfred skulk around outside. Someone opens up the door to the lion cage and lets it into the room with Gina, but Gregor comes to the rescue. Carl the ringmaster knows that Elliot is a cop and tells him about the business with Gina and the lion. Elliot gets a warrant to search the whole circus, and Barbini laughs at the whole idea. But as Elliot questions Gina about the lion attack, the police come in and tell them they've found a body and a knife. And as they check out the body, someone kills Gina with another of those knives. Well, Mario, since they're his knives, immediately becomes the prime suspect. Eddie the clown sets up a guillotine for his act and scares Mr. Big with it.
You know that's coming back, right? It's got to.
Yep. Carl casts aspersions on Gregor and his niece Natasha. Could that body that they have found been Natasha's father? Gregor and Carl argue about Natasha. Carl wants to find the man who murdered his father. The killer was sentenced to prison for life, but he escaped. Gregor's brother Otto was that murderer. And about then I suspected where this was going, with the Gregor and Otto being brothers, and you never see his face. Huh, yeah. Carl expects Otto to come back someday and find his daughter Natasha. Well, Carl tells Inspector Elliot about Otto and Gregor. Has anyone seen Gregor's scars? No. Well, Berbini identifies the murder weapon as belonging to the great Danilo, who died 10 years ago. He did have a son, but he wasn't in the circus. Elliot requests a photo of Natasha's missing father, the escaped prisoner. He's the same height and general physical appearance of Gregor. And we cut to Gregor getting more money out of his suitcase, paying off Mr. Big. Someone we don't see follows him and look for the money, and Manfred follows him. And Manfred gets a knife in the chest for his efforts. So there's a pretty decent body count here in this movie. Well, back at his trailer, Gregor takes off his mask, and he is completely unscarred. He is
Surprising
Otto.
no one.
Yep. Christopher Lee underneath, what you could tell by the voice. Yeah. And Natasha is well aware that he's her father. He denies having killed anyone. He says he simply found the suitcase. Well, someone sets fire to the barn where Manfred and the money are hidden. Gregor runs in and grabs the suitcase, but can't get out. Carl comes in to help him. See, there's from the poster, the fire scene with the two guys.
Okay, you got me.
Yep. Carl pulls off Gregor's mask, and he knows what's up. Gregor whacks him and drives off with Natasha. Well, Otto, Gregor, and Natasha hide in a cave. Carl finds the cave, and they all argue about who killed Carl's father. Otto tells the story. Yet it wasn't murder. Carl believes the story and offers to help him escape when the police arrive. But Otto falls over the side of a cliff, and the real killer steps on his fingers. Otto dies, and all the money goes over the side with him.
Well, that didn't go well.
No. Well, they have the money, but Elliot says they haven't caught the killer. Natasha and Carl cleared Otto of the murders. Elliot has an idea of how to catch the murderer. So, Berberini has everyone gathered together to watch Mario do his new act. Mario is using those knives, the murder weapon knives. Eddie admits that his father was Danilo, which kind of came out of the blue.
Nowhere.
Yeah, why would he just suddenly go nuts and admit that? Yeah. And he shows them all how well he can throw knives. I made clowns out of many of you. Well, Elliot comes in to arrest him, but Eddie runs and is killed. Barberini fires Mr. Big for blackmail, and that pretty much wraps it all up.
You're like, oh yeah, you're fired, dwarf man.
Yeah.
Because we don't know why he even knows that there was blackmail, but you got to wrap it up somehow.
Yeah. Well, he knew about the money being the bills.
Who's the murderer? How about that guy over there? We've seen him a few times.
Yeah. And it was kind of funny because Mr. Big is all smug, like, oh, police can't prove anything. I'm not in trouble. And Berberini says, yeah, well, I don't need proof to fire you. Get out of here.
Eddie basically just admitted the whole thing for really no reason. Yes, they found the knives, but that didn't prove he killed anyone. Christopher Lee is Gregor/Otto here, and he wears a black hood over his face in almost all the scenes until the end.
The majority of it, yeah.
This isn't really a horror movie at all. It's more of a whodunit crime thriller with lots of potential suspects and no real clues for us to guess. I mean, yeah, we saw Eddie here and there doing his bad tricks and stuff. There's no reason to think he's a murderer.
No.
As soon as we heard about Otto, Gregor, and Natasha, we figured that Otto was really the one under the mask.
Oh, yeah.
But that also seemed pretty obvious, so we weren't totally sure. It could have been a red herring.
That's where they went. It wasn't.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It's entertaining throughout, but it's definitely more mystery than horror. But I did like it.
I did too. I was pleasantly surprised.
All right, which takes us to our final movie of the week, 1991's Child's Play 3.
Oh.
That bad?
Yeah, I thought so.
Directed by Jack Bender, written by Don Mancini, stars Justin Whalen, who is not the kid from the previous two movies, Perry Reeves, Jeremy Silvers, hour 30 minutes. Trailer in the usual place.
Spoiler free. This one tries to be pretty serious, with a few exceptions here and there, but it just ends up being kind of dull. It's a little too stretched out and nothing very new. It's not terrible, it's just there. The practical effects hold up pretty well, but I'd call it my least favorite of all the Chucky things.
So would I. I like Chucky, but not this one.
Not this one so much.
Yeah, basically they just took
my
the
least favorite.
first two movies and moved it to a military place.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, it's exactly
much
the
new.
same otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, we open on the long-since closed Good Guys factory, where people start pulling doll parts off the cobwebbed conveyor belt. They're throwing it all away, including the lump of melted goo that used to be Chucky. He got melted in the previous movie.
Yep, cleaning up for the new production.
A claw machine picks up the melted glob and it drips blood into the machinery as credits roll.
Uh-oh, that's a vat of fresh plastic being used to make new Chucky dolls.
Chucky is reformed. But not reformed.
Not
just
really.
Reformed,
yeah.
We get a briefing about Andy Barclay and Chucky. This is the boardroom of the modern Good Guys company. They want to put Good Guys back on the market, even despite all that bad PR it got years ago. Of course, they don't believe anything about one of their dolls being alive. Mr. Sullivan, the CEO, is a hard ass, talking about their consumers. Kind of guy you don't want to work for.
But he gets his.
Sullivan takes home the very first new Good Guys doll in the box, which he takes to his office full of toys.
Bad move.
Shortly afterward, Chucky uses the toys to make an impact on Sullivan.
He has a lot of cool toys.
Yeah. Chucky uses Sullivan's computer to track down Andy, who has recently been enrolled in military school. Chucky knows the only way he can get out of the toy body is to transfer himself into Andy, so off he goes. Andy then tells the commandant of the military place that his mother has been committed, and he's had adjustment problems with the foster families. But this is 5 years after the previous movie, so he could have tried to fit in. Didn't work.
Didn't try very hard. Not hard enough, apparently.
The commandant, Colonel Cochran, talks about fantasies of killer dolls. Yep, he knows Andy's history.
Mm-hmm.
The barber, Sergeant Botnick, is a hair sadist. He was the highlight of the movie.
He was definitely a bright spot, yeah.
Tyler, a young cadet, likes watching the Good Guys cartoons on TV. Well, Andy meets his roommate, Whitehurst, who has been tied up by Shelton, the school bully. Shelton soon turns his eye to Andy, but De Silva stands up to him and gets 25 push-ups for it. The officer in the mailroom gives Tyler a box to deliver to Andy. We know what's in that box. As the box gets broken open, we see it is in fact a Good Guy doll, which he decides to keep for himself.
Oh, that's not good.
Chucky leaps out and talks to Tyler about mail tampering. He's such a law-abiding guy.
Oh, yeah. Least of his worries.
Chucky then tries to transferring himself into Tyler. De Silva shows Andy how to shoot a rifle. Chucky, meanwhile, does his voodoo transfer spell on Tyler, but they're interrupted by Cochran. Cochran takes Chucky away, since cadets aren't allowed to play with dolls. Andy sees Chucky, and Chucky sees Andy. Chucky then gets thrown in the garbage truck, and he kills the driver to escape. Chucky gets into Andy's dorm room and makes himself known. Chucky doesn't try to take over Andy this time. Tyler would be a much better target.
So no, Andy's got to save Tyler.
Just then, Shelton comes in and catches Andy and the doll, which he promptly steals. Andy sneaks into Shelton's room late at night to get Chucky back. He gets caught, and it's a punishment for everyone. Chucky uses the distraction to hunt for Tyler, who wants to play hide-and-seek with him. De Silva uses the distraction to read Andy's personnel file, and she finds Tyler and Chucky in a closet. She puts lipstick on Chucky, which he does not appreciate.
But can't do anything about it.
Colonel Cochran goes into his office and knows something is off. When Chucky jumps out with a knife, the old man just falls down with a heart attack, much to Chucky's surprising glee. Didn't have to do a thing.
Didn't have to do anything.
Andy warns Tyler about Chucky, but the little boy doesn't believe him. Because good guys are the good guys.
Uh-huh.
Sergeant Botnick finds Chucky and thinks his hair is too long. Time for a little trim. Nope, Chucky trims the sergeant's neck with a razor.
Saw that coming.
Yeah. The new leader of the school announces that it's time for war games using paintball guns. Chucky, of course, swaps out the paintballs for real ammunition. That'll liven things up.
Yeah, it will.
De Silva kisses Andy, and Chucky gets jealous. Chucky gets Tyler away from the crowd and reveals that he's not a good guy. Chucky takes good advantage of the war games as everyone gets moving. Andy and Tyler track down Chucky, who now has De Silva as a hostage. Shelton arrives on the scene and sees Chucky, just as someone on the other team shoots him with a real bullet. Okay.
Things just got real.
Tyler and Chucky run away from the carnage toward the nearby carnival. Andy follows. Tyler gets the carnival's security guard to help, and Andy and De Silva soon find the guard dead right after that. De Silva takes the dead guard's pistol. They all go into the funhouse, where Chucky prepares once again to swap souls.
A deadly funhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, this is some funhouse.
Uh-huh. It's very cool.
It's so many violations.
So dangerous. Yeah.
Well, there's a shootout, and De Silva is wounded. She gives Andy the gun, but he barely knows how to use it. An accident with a funhouse ride rips off half of Chucky's face, but Tyler isn't crafty enough to keep evading him. Chucky does the spell, and the sky gets all supernaturally cloudy. But Andy has to climb up to where Chucky and Tyler are, on like a mound of dolls, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Andy tries really hard and shoots at Chucky in mid-spell.
Blows his hand right off.
Andy wakes up Tyler as Chucky grabs him from behind. Chucky ends up falling into the ridiculously huge exposed fan blade. It's like 10 feet round and chop, 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 chop,
every
chop, chop.
funhouse would have one of those.
You know, the funhouse with little kids and
Yeah.
And it chops him to bits. Then Andy goes off with the police, likely to be charged with something. And we'll never see Chucky again, right?
No, never.
No.
Mm-mm.
Who would build a funhouse with so many actually dangerous death trap situations?
Awesome funhouse.
When they say keep your hands and arms inside the ride at all times.
Oh, they mean it.
Oh,
in
they
that
mean
one.
it here.
Yeah, or else.
Chucky was still plastic and mostly done with practical effects here, which is good. Andrew Robinson, remember him from Hellraiser and other things?
I think so.
As the barber Nazi is just hilarious here.
He's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Most of the other characters play it pretty seriously and straight here, but this is actually the last film of the series where they can't really be called a straight-up comedy. I think the next one is Bride of Chucky, and they definitely just get silly at that point.
They just pulled the comedy report on that one, yeah.
They're still good, but there's a definite shift of tone.
Uh-huh.
Don Mancini, the writer and director, was forced to start work on this even before the second film had aired.
And it shows.
We want more.
Yeah.
Since the actor who played Andy was still only 9 years old at the time, they had to recast him with an older actor.
Now, later on in the series and stuff,
Yeah, he shows
the
up.
same actor keeps coming back as an adult, but
Yeah.
at this point he couldn't.
Mancini also felt that being forced to make a third film so soon after the second was hard, as he was kind of out of ideas. And it shows.
Yeah, it does.
This is, in both of our opinions, the worst film of the series. Fortunately, after this, they took a few years off, and the following movies were far better once they embraced the comedic side of Chucky.
They came back better. Yeah, I like that.
They won me over with Voodoo for Dummies. That was just maybe the best sight gag in the entire series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, that is it for this week. Stop in next week when we're going to have more movies and more shorts and more goodness for you next, or more evil for you, depending on how you want to look at it.
All sorts of things.
All sorts of horror movies.
Yeah.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.